Ten li yavne v'chachamecha. Give me Yavne and its scholars. They are among the most significant words uttered in our Jewish tradition. As the Romans prepared to destroy Jerusalem, a city already embroiled in factionalism, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai requested of the Roman general, Ten li Yavne v'chachamecha. Give me Yavne and its scholars. All of you who are being ordained today, Max and Daniel, Lori and Abby, Laura, Daniel, and Jeff. You guys all know this story. But today I ask you to see it not just as the origin story for rabbinic Judaism emerging out of Jerusalem's ashes. As you stand on the cusp of leading our people, I ask you to step into Yochanan's shoes. Imagine the fear and the chaos in those final days of the temple. Imagine what Yochanan faced without 2,000 years of hindsight. Some condemned him for his request for Yavne and its scholars. He should have said to the general, let the Jews off this time. But the Talmudic sages rushed to his defense. They explained that asking for all of Jerusalem would have left him with nothing. So Yochanan asked for something more modest, the backwater town of Yavne and its scholars. But in actuality, his ask was not modest at all. In that one breath, he consciously chose to transform the past and fundamentally shift the Jewish future. Yochanan did this not because he saw the Romans as unwilling to save Jerusalem. He did this because he saw Jerusalem as unwilling to save itself. The status quo so shackled the people of Jerusalem that they became passive bystanders in their own destruction. In that critical moment, one of Yochanan's colleagues, Rabbi Zechariah, he chose the status quo of the past. When he refused to offer the Romans' gift as a sacrifice because of a minor blemish, he knew the consequence. He knew that he would escalate tensions with Roman authorities, but he believed that there is a way that we have always done our sacrifices that was not to be altered, no matter the circumstance. And in that critical moment, even Yochanan's own nephew, his own nephew, Abba Sikra, chose the status quo with his faction. As the leader of the Zealots, he failed to change course from violently fueling rebellion with Rome. What can I do? He said. If I say anything to them, they will kill me. He refused to stand up, not because he believed in their terrorism, but because he didn't want to go against the grain. Yochanan found himself in a world yoked by moral cowardice and conventional wisdom. And he chose to break out of the familiar and step into the unknown. He chose chutzpah. Ten li Yavne v'chachamecha. Give me Yavne and its scholars. As rabbis to be, just imagine how it must have felt for Yochanan in reaching that conclusion. How terrifying it must have been to utter those words, knowing that future generations could lay the destruction of Jerusalem at his feet, putting all of his faith in this ragtag bunch of Jewish scholars in some backwater town and an idea untested yet unrealized. He had moments of doubt, to be sure. On his deathbed, he began to weep. Two paths are before me, one to Gan Eden and one to Gehinnom, and I do not know upon which I will be led. He couldn't help but ask himself, did I make the right decision? Being a visionary will not eliminate doubt. In fact, it will fuel it. Yochanan knew that he could have gotten it wrong, but as much as he questioned his choice, he understood that the greater risk was in the status quo. And in your rabbinate, you will learn the power that the status quo can hold over our community. You will learn that sometimes we conflate conventional wisdom with Torah Sinai. You will feel it in a committee meeting when they tell you that that's not how it's done here. You will feel it in the rejection of a controversial sermon that you give or an article that you publish. You will feel it when they tell you all of the reasons why your vision won't work. I certainly felt it in every accusation of naivete and self-hatred for my work in Muslim-Jewish relations. But I have also witnessed conventional wisdom dissolve in front of me. As we built real, resilient relationships between Muslims and Jews, this new reality supplanted the conventional wisdom that relations between Jews and Muslims are inherently toxic, that those who engage with the other risk poisoning and subsequent isolation from the community. I started to understand that the truths that our community tells itself, they are truths that are born out of the last 50 years. And they may have been true for the last 50 years or even longer. But they will not be the truths for the next 50 years. Now that realization was profoundly liberating. But that realization is also terrifying, because it means that nobody actually knows where we're going. Nobody knows what's next. It means that you may, in fact, be the one with the insight to get us to the next stage of ourselves. That you may find yourself in the same place as Yochanan ben Zakkai, understanding a truth that the rest of our community has yet to face. That you may just be called by circumstance and by conscience to step into that void. If you are waiting for somebody to grant you permission, you will wait indefinitely before Kafka's gatekeeper. That gate exists for you and you alone to walk through. You will be tempted to blame others for preventing your passage to the other side because they said no, or criticized you, or dismissed you, or challenged you. But ultimately, you and you alone choose whether to cross that threshold into the unknown. Dr. Rachel Adler has provided the core rooting Torah of my life when she reminds us that our people are called Ivrim for a reason. Sometimes I am supposed to be a boundary crosser and Ivri, to go forth as Abraham and Sarah did into a land that they did not know. We walk in the borderlands, and there are times when we will uphold the boundaries, but often we cross them. We resituate them. We redraw the boundaries. And it's not always clear what action you should take as you are walking alongside those borders. But if every time you choose to reinforce the boundary, you are not living up to your calling as an Ivri. Our world as Ivrim today, it differs only in degree, not in substance, from the world of Yochanan ben Zakkai. We too are at a moment of factionalism and polarization. We know that the truths of the past will not be the same truths of the future. We know that the institutions that serve our community need to drastically transform or risk death by a drawn-out demise. This is a truth that Rabbi Pankin understood in his leadership of the Institute. Our joy today is pierced with the pain of his absence, the reality that your moment under the chuppah will not have the khatimah of his kiss on your forehead. But you carry his legacy with you into that most sacred moment and into your rabbinate. Because Rabbi Pankin shared Yochanan ben Zakkai's essence in the way that he forged ahead with ideas not yet fully embraced by the community as a whole. With his focus on building new programs and an emphasis on entrepreneurship over institutionalism and collaboration over territorialism. Questioning, he said, helps make our institutions better, sometimes incrementally, sometimes exponentially. He was right. And today, he was going to say to you, Da lifnei mi ata omed, know before whom you stand. And that knowing before whom you stand implies taking a stance. Be willing to take a stand. He is not here to share those words with you, but you are here to carry those words and his memory with you. Your rabbinate will be defined by those moments when you take a stand, when you shrug off the yoke of the status quo and halt the momentum of conventional wisdom, when you draw upon every ounce of courage and chutzpah to take a stand for a vision that others do not yet see. When you are called by circumstance and by conscience to push us beyond the status quo, I know this for sure. It will be terrifying. It will be hard. You will disappoint people. You will have doubt, and it will be lonely. But all of that means that you're doing it right. To be a leader, as I have learned from adaptive leadership, is to disappoint your own people at a tolerable pace for a purpose. To be a leader is to disappoint your own people at a tolerable pace for a purpose. There is pain and loss in transformation. As a leader, you must not only provide vision for the future, you must hold people as they mourn the changes from their past, because the past cannot be the future. You must carry them with compassion as you inspire them into the unknown alongside you. It's no longer enough to serve the Jewish people. We need you to lead us. We need you to trust yourself enough to push through the fear, the hardship, the disappointment, the doubt, and the loneliness. We are counting on you to recognize that moment when you are called by circumstance and by conscience to stand up and say, Ten li yavne v'chachamecha, b'hatzlacha.